Okay. So 5 minutes and we will be training. Hang around. Okay, so we're going to hop into it. And the play behind today is to drop in and talk a little bit in around sales, selling, objection handling, and everything in between. So the goal behind this is going to be to help you be able to go from where you are now up to that next stage. And it is amazing for me on how many people still are doing things in a very outdated way. And it's actually holding them back within their business, or as a salesperson, it's just not helping you. So the goal here is going to be to break this down in a way that's actually going to help you be able to move forward. Now, I've got the cameras facing away from me so that you guys can see the board, but it means I can't see the screen at the moment on there. So if you put a question in, I'll have to pop behind it and have a look as we go. So I want us to think about a couple of areas. So if we're talking around sales itself, the goal behind objection handling isn't pressuring people. It isn't about pushing people into your product. It isn't about trapping people. So we're not trying to trap people. You're not trying to bully people. You're not trying to drag someone into buying your product. That's the old school way of selling. And although it can get you some degree of results, it will not help you in the long term. So this is your old sales. And this is where people convince them to say yes 50 times, lead them So they're trying to get them to say yes 50 times, or they're trying to just take them down a path where they are literally stuck and they're trapped and they've got nothing else they can do apart from agree with you. Now, I know I've spelled that wrong. Now, the problem that we've got here is just because you logically make sense in a conversation, it doesn't mean that the person is going to want to hand over the money. So we've got to be able to look at this in a way that's actually going to move us forward in the most effective play. And for the vast majority of people that are out there, this is why people hate salespeople. Is because they don't want this. But modern selling is far more effective anyway. And actually, it means it's a far better experience for the other person to actually buy from you. Bear with me just a moment. Right. So we're in the middle of getting our office done and the internet keeps messing about. So we're just changing the internet over. So we want to be able to think about all of this means that we have a low interest and we resist selling because it makes you feel like crap. It's not nice for you as the business owner or as a salesperson, but it's also not nice for the prospect either. And we want to be at the stage now that people actually are being drawn into what we are actually talking about, not being repelled by what we're actually trying to do. So we want to make sure at the minute, but when you're thinking about what you're doing at the minute, is it moving you towards a sale? Or is it moving you away from a sale? Right, there we go. Few little technical issues. So the goal here is, yes, you want it to be easy to say yes to, hard to say no to, without increasing resistance. Now, every time you open your mouth in a sales process, you are either increasing resistance, reducing resistance, you're increasing flow, or you're reducing flow. And it is so important for you to realize that the goal with this is to keep up the flow and keep low the resistance. And the problem is, when you're doing any of this old school stuff, it does the opposite. It ends up increasing resistance and it reduces the flow of the conversation. And that doesn't help you. It doesn't help me. It doesn't help anyone out there. Okay, right, you're back Instagram. We changed the internet over. So the goal here for us in our modern selling is to make sure that when we're leaning into things like objection handling, but we're doing it in a way that's actually going to be more effective for you, that you can do consistently over time, but is also going to actually draw people into wanting to work with you. So we've got two sides of this. You've got the objection handle. And you have the objection I think that's right, prevention. Objection prevention. Now, in an ideal world, you're going to prevent the objections before they actually come up. And for the vast majority of the time, the problem that we have, if you think about your sales process, let's say that you have a 3-stage process. Maybe that's a cold call. Maybe that's a pitch. Maybe that goes into a proposal, whatever that might be. Or maybe it's a 2-stage call where it's a lead in, into a pitch and a one call close. The problem is, for the vast majority of the time, people wait to get to this stage here before they start gauging where that person is in the sales process, and this actually holds you back. And here's why. If you've gone through, think about what we were talking about earlier, about increasing flow and reducing resistance. Let's say throughout this process, I'll wipe these two options out. We'll just stick with one because it's going to make it easier. If you have a 2 call, 3 call, whatever it might be, let's imagine we're just in that sales cycle here. Let's imagine it's a 1 call close where you're getting on and the goal here is to sell and convert into a client. Let's imagine for a moment that this is a 40-minute conversation. Again, this will vary for any type of industry and different types of products and services. You might have a 2 call stage, you might have a 5 call stage, but let's just go with this as a context. Now, the goal here is to keep the flow high and the resistance low. And this process might be broken down into 5 main stages. There might be the initial part here of a pre-frame. This might be the discovery. And again, this will vary depending on your product, right? This might be need gap. This might be the pitch. And this might be the close. Again, each different business that you're in, each industry that you're in, this will vary. But I'm giving it for context today. So whoever you are and wherever you are, you can get a bit of an idea behind this and a bit of context on what you need to be able to do. Now, if you wait, to find objections until here, you likely will have increased throughout this process. You would have actually done the complete opposite, and you've increased resistance and you've reduced the flow. So now when they've got to this stage, they feel almost trapped. And when someone feels trapped, they're not thinking about the positives. So we want to be at the stage now, but when you're in the process, if you can focus in more on the objection prevention throughout your process, it's going to be far easier. Then when you get to the end of this stage, you should only be at this stage if all of this has had the green light all the way through. And I'll give you guys a prime example. Yesterday, I got a message. Well, the team had a message on the DMs in TikTok, and someone wanted to get on a call with me. And the way it works with us is pretty simple. Before someone gets on a call with us, we want to know their industry, the company, who they are, and what they're trying to achieve. Because if we just hopped on a phone call here with no base qualification, our conversion rate would completely and utterly tank. Because we get a lot of people that want to get on calls. Doesn't mean that they want to buy a product. It doesn't mean they want to get help. Doesn't mean that they want to pay for a service. Doesn't mean they're going to be a fit. So we want to make sure before anything happens, but when someone gets onto a call here, we've already got a degree of base qualification that we understand. 1, that we know we can help them. 2, what their state is at the moment and what they're actually trying to achieve in a bit more detail. So let's say, for example, that you're in the solar space or you're in plumbing, heating. Maybe you're one of those trades. You're in a luxury garden room. You do blinds on windows. You do kitchen extensions. You're a builder. You do insurance. You do coaching. Whatever it is, you sell property. If you're making sure that this, before you even get onto this stage here, that you've got the base qualification, it actually helps you with keeping this the right way round, where we keep the flow high and reduce the resistance. It helps with objection prevention because we've got a foundation to start all these conversations with. And people are so eager to get into their pitch. What they're not thinking about is actually, is this person even the right fit? Because if they're not, all of this time has been wasted. A lot of people are in such a rush to get to this stage of the sales process, they don't do any of this part correctly. And that's why they end up with having to objection handle here instead of objection prevention here. So what we need to be able to start thinking about is, okay, cool. So objection prevention sounds all good in theory, but how does that actually going to work for me within my business? Well, if you guys have got the data, which you should have, on how many calls and conversations you've had over the last 30 days, over the last 90 days, and you understand how many of those conversations have converted into paying clients. You should also know where in the process does it go wrong. If you're at the stage now that you do all of this and you always or nearly always get to the end of a pitch and they end up telling you I want to think about it, I need more time, money, wife, partner, husband, that's because you haven't done this part here in an effective way. You shouldn't be getting to the end of these conversations to a high majority where that becomes a problem. You should be at the stage that in these conversations, you are getting to this end of the conversation and you've done a huge amount of objection prevention throughout this process to go forward. Now, you could break this down into another area. Like we said earlier, you might have the 2-stage process where you've got the appointment setting or triage, if I could learn to spell, and then into the close and pitch. That would mean a load of this stuff here would be done at this stage, meaning when you get here, you've only got to do a small amount of these bits to lead into the close. Now, that might mean that you end up not having to do a huge amount more work, but it just means for you that when you're in a conversation, you want to have the confidence and the conviction around what you are saying and who you are talking to. You don't want to be the desperate person in the bar who's just trying to talk to someone. It is not just about talking to anyone out there. So let's go back to a conversation I had with, the team had yesterday with this person online. So this person was adamant that they wanted to get on a call with me. Now, he didn't want to answer any questions, wouldn't give me the company name. I said to the team, I want to know the company name, website, industry, what they're trying to get help with. Now, if I'd have gone back to the amateur days, I would have immediately booked that person into a call and spent all this time talking to them instead of knowing this base stuff. Now, that person refused to give me the company name, refused to tell me the industry, told me that it was my fault and it's this, it is that, and blah, 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 all of this stuff. But it saved me getting on a call to start with, because I want to make sure that if I'm on a call with someone here, I've got a base idea that we know we should be able to potentially help. I then want to be at stage 2, but maybe in the pre-frame stage, we've pre-framed what's going to happen on the conversation, and I'm looking for ways to disqualify someone. Not as in being stupid or ignorant or arrogant, but actually don't look to find the answers that you want. Actually look to find the flaws. And if I get to the end of this stage here, so let's say they qualify here, and I get into my pre-frame, and I don't get the vibe. Before I move into this next section, I want to make sure that this is a big old tick. And I'm not going to move forward until it is. Now, that happens for the next stage. So now let's say in the pre-frame, I'm getting a good vibe, I'm getting a good energy. The person seems open, they're communicating well. We're talking in the right way. They've got a degree of interest. They've got a problem, whatever those parameters are. So we've got our ticks here. We now move into that discovery stage. In this discovery stage here, if I'm at the stage now where someone is being very closed off, they don't want to give personal information, they don't want to talk about X, they don't want to talk about Y, for me and my business, for example, there's going to be areas in here where we're going to need to understand revenue, team, conversion percentages, all of that type of stuff. This is all going to help me with my objection prevention. But if someone here isn't open to doing those things, I will get out of this conversation, set a next step, video to watch or something similar before we do any of this. And we would set up that next stage. Because it's far better to make sure that if I'm here to genuinely try and help someone, me sitting through a further 25 minutes on here with someone who isn't ready, they're not in the right mindset, they don't have the capacity, they don't have the decision capacity, they don't have the ability to make a decision even if they wanted to. Why waste that time? And it's so important to value that time. I want you to value it for you, and I want you to value it for them. Because your job is to help someone in a place that they don't know what to do, to make a good decision that's going to make their life better. That's what the plan's going to be. And if you're at the stage now where all you're trying to do is push as many people through here into calls and you're hoping it's just going to happen, it's not. So we want to make sure that let's focus in on what are the main objections that we're going to have here and what are going to be the barriers here. Now, if you start working out the core objections that you have and you start putting these in your sales process to help you before you get to that stage. This just means if we can start getting these polished off before we've got to the end, it means that we've prevented a lot of the hurdles and barriers we've got. Because if they are genuine hurdles and barriers, we are likely better to handle those sooner rather than later, rather than waiting till the end. And that's where people are going to feel pressured. Now, do you want people to make a decision? Yeah. But you don't want them to feel pressured into making the wrong decision. I say to people all the time, I only want you to work with me. I only want to buy the product and service from us if you see it's going to make your life better. So now we've worked out the core objections. We've worked out when the objections come up. So this is where a lot of people go wrong. The main reason the objection comes up here is because you've not tried to get it out sooner. Part of objection prevention is getting a lot of these hurdles and barriers out the way as soon as you possibly can. Because if you're not focused on trying to help this person, if all you're trying to do is coerce them into buying your product, you're going to be in an awkward place because they're going to feel it. Which is why the old school ways just don't work. So let's imagine you're in a process now and all you're trying to do is rush this through. You get to the end. They don't feel educated. They haven't gone through the stage of transitioning into a buying state. You haven't built the need. You haven't got the interest. You haven't got them wanting the help. All you've ended up doing is just force them with your features, pivot, benefit, feature, pivot, benefit, all the way through. And now they get to the end, and then they're going to tell you they just want to think about it. I need more time. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to pray on it, whatever it might be. So what we want to be able to start thinking about is if we know what our objections are, and we know when those objections come up, we want to be able to work out how to address without increasing the resistance and without reducing flow. And this is where most people will get stuck. Because they say, okay, well, Dave, this makes sense. If I can get them to the stage where we've got low resistance and we've got increased flow, it is going to make life so much easier. But how do I address these objections? Well, it comes into a 3-stage process. And actually, you are the main differentiator that's here. And this is why so many people mess it up. So if you're here on TikTok, whether you're here on Instagram, whether you're here on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, the way you address hurdles, barriers, and problems starts off with you and your approach, but it also comes down to the way you feel about a lot of these problems and hurdles. For the vast majority of people, they automatically feel that things aren't going on in the right way. So we want to make sure that people are actually messing up. By the way, I can see some questions and stuff coming through because I walk behind the camera. I will do my best to come around and do the questions, so do stick around. So we want to be at the stage now that if you know what the objections are and you're sort of working out where they come up, you've got to then be able to work out how you bring those up. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can sell through stories. You can use analogies. You can use comparables. You can talk about clients. You can have testimonials. There's so many ways to address the problem. Because the big thing is, if other people have also gone through those problems and pains, it's going to be easier. And here's why this is so much more important than this. This, you are reacting to the objection, and this, you are preempting the question. And the reason I wrote those out differently is because they are completely different. If all you're doing is reacting to the problem, all that's going to happen is you're only then telling them because you have to. But actually, what do we need people to do? We need people to buy into us. We need to buy into the program, the service, the product. And for that to happen, they've got to feel like they can trust you. And if the only time that you address hurdles and barriers and problems is when they bring it up, some people will think, oh, they're only telling me this because I brought it up. But let's imagine that we're in our sales process and you know that your product is expensive, or you know that people worry about whether the results will be happening. And in this early part of the conversation, in the pre-frame, in the discovery, in the need gap, you address that and you start talking about it. It makes them actually feel that where they are right now is actually a benefit. And this is the problem that we have with objections. Objections are normally based on some degree of foundation. So let's say, for example, there might be a belief. There might be a misconception. They might have just the wrong information. There might be out-of-date info. And they are basing their decision based on out-of-date information, the wrong belief, the wrong process. So for you to get them to be able to make a confident decision in the close, you need to have a shift in beliefs, misconceptions, information, to be able to proactively make sense of it. Because if we get to the end here and they've still got the wrong belief about the product or service, they of course are going to feel that they need to think about it, because they're suddenly having a change in perspective. Does this all make sense to you guys? So imagine if we're at the stage here and we start talking about what those beliefs currently are. Maybe they think this, maybe you think that. One of my clients thought about this, and one of my clients who's now doing great, when they first met me, they actually thought A, B, and C. Is that similar to you? Now, if you can get someone to understand that they have the wrong information, out-of-date information, they have a misconception or a belief here, As you're going through this process, the change is already starting to happen, which means when we get to the end of the conversation and we ask for the order, it is far easier for that person to say yes. But imagine for a moment that they have a belief here. And all the way through, you've ignored that belief. They've actually increased resistance throughout this process. So now you've got to the end of the close. They have the wrong belief. They have the wrong information. They have the wrong knowledge. They have the wrong understandings. And you have increased the resistance and you've reduced the flow of the conversation. You are making it harder for that person to move forward. Too many people, they're just going through this motion and hoping people are going to buy. But if they've got the wrong belief, misconception, wrong information, for some of you that are selling a product that is more expensive than most people would normally buy, it ends up being a problem because they end up having the wrong information or the wrong context around what it is they're actually buying, what they're actually paying for. And I can't stress it to you guys enough. If you can help someone that has the wrong belief, misconception, change it sooner. The earlier you change it in the process using objection prevention, the easier it's going to be to convert this place into a sale and remove the barrier and the problem that's actually there. And a lot of people, what they're trying to do is trying to sweep a lot of this stuff under the rug. They're trying to push it under the table and you're hoping the person doesn't bring it up. But here's what the real problem is. Just because they didn't bring it up doesn't mean they didn't think about it. Just because they didn't say it to you doesn't mean it's not a problem. And for the vast majority of the time, we just expect people to tell us their problems, their pain points, their fears, and their misconceptions. But some people, they don't even know that it's a belief. They don't know it's wrong information. It's just what they believe to be true. And if they believe something is true, it is very hard for them to change that belief pattern without evidence that's actually going to be convincing. Now, here's the other part of this. Let's say that we're at the stage now that someone has got a real strong belief. Let me change pages. Let's say for a moment someone has got a really super strong belief. And you find out here, in that window of 10 minutes, you're trying to get them to change a belief. Now that new belief is being adopted, get them to make a decision. But instead of doing that, if you find out what that belief is in one of these stages, it means throughout that process, you can be talking and leaning back to that point continuously throughout that process. And what's actually going to end up happening is suddenly you're talking about more stories and it gets a little bit of a softer belief and a softer belief. And suddenly you've got more analogies and more evidence, and suddenly this belief changes and now they're buying into it. And now you're starting to get back to having an increase in flow and reducing the resistance. So now you're getting more momentum in the conversation that when you get to this stage here, it's easier for them to buy. Now, bear in mind for a moment, no one intentionally gets on a phone call with you and on purpose doesn't buy. People are getting on a call because they've got a problem they want to fix. Now, it might be out of budget. There might be hurdles, there might be barriers, there might be beliefs, but that's where you come in. And if you can help that person have a good perspective, if you can help people change these beliefs from being negative into being positive, it is only going to mean the ability for them to say yes and to make a decision is massively increased. And for the vast majority of the time, we're not spending enough time looking at what are their beliefs, their misconceptions, the information they've got. Is it outdated? Do they understand it? Because if you start working out all of this process and you start understanding these are the changes that need to happen, you are actually helping that person move forward. And the vast majority of the time, you're not doing any of this stuff. You're not focused on these areas. You're not hunting for their beliefs, their understanding, their knowledge. You're just trying to pitch like crazy, and you're hoping some of it sticks. And this is why you end up with terrible conversions. And do you know what one of the biggest problems is? The biggest thief for people getting high level results is the fact that they get good now. Because they're so scared to make a change because they're worried that they're going to lose the good. So if you're at a stage now where you're thinking, okay, all of this makes some degree of sense. Okay, I sort of get what this means. I make my life easier, and I'll just share this with you. This is what we do in our business. Taking some of this off to make it easier. Before someone gets on a call with me, I know typically a rough outline of their beliefs, misconceptions, fears, whatever that might be, information and understanding. So I understand the way they think. I've got an idea of it. And what I've ended up doing is creating a video. You can go to becomeyourpotential.info if you're actually serious about wanting our help. And it's our BYP video. Becomeyourpotential.info. And what we've ended up doing is recorded a video that's 10, 12 minutes long. And what it does is it showcases exactly what we do. And it talks about the beliefs a lot of people have, the misconceptions, the fears, the information, the understanding that a lot of these people have. And what that means for us is simply this. If we can help change the beliefs, the understanding, the information here before the call, it is far easier to now build that throughout this process, meaning that we don't have to focus on a huge amount of this at the end of the conversation, meaning that we end up converting a higher level. Because the earlier we can help work on the beliefs, myths, fears, and misconceptions that people have, the easier it is for people to buy into a new plan. And this is why it is so important. Because instead of waiting to do your objection handling here at the end, when you understand these barriers and you get these in before they've even got on a call, it makes your life easier. It is easier to move forward because they have the ability to process this beforehand. And it also means if someone has watched this and they liked it, and now they get on a phone call, in the pre-frame, we can reference what? The video. We can find out fast what they liked, what they didn't like, what they believe, what they don't believe, what they understand, what knowledge that they have, based on the video explainer that we've got. And what we do in here is we actually use quite creative things. We use animated videos that tell stories, that give examples, that are explainers to help that person to ask a question. And that question is, what if? What if they're right? What if they can do this? What if they are different? What if my business could do better? And it means that we can then help that person move forward. It is so important to understand. But if I can get people coming into the call with better beliefs, breaking the misconceptions, overcoming fears, the right info, and a better understanding, it's great. And you know what I really like? Is when someone gets on a call with me and they will call bullshit. If they say, yeah, on that video, you said that you helped a solar company convert 44 out of 46 of their SAT appointments. I don't believe that's possible. Okay, great. Thanks for that. Let me ask you a question. If I could prove to you how that worked, would you be open to seeing it? Yes. Now, before we've even got to a play of this, we've now found an anchor which believes based on their understanding, their fears, their misconceptions, and their beliefs. And that can be the one single thing that holds back the deal. This is why it is so important that before you've got into this, whether this is going to be for appointment setting into a close, or it's going to be a base triage into an appointment setting into a close, or if it's going to end up being the appointment into a pitch, into a proposal, doesn't matter. Whether it's one call close, two call close, three call closes, having things organized in a better way where you're helping people to shape new beliefs, new ideas, new understandings, helps you be more effective in what you're trying to do. And the goal here, remember, reduce resistance and increase flow. And if you can get to the stage that a lot of this baggage, which is baggage, and it's understandable why this holds people back, before they even get on that call, before you do the pre-frame, the discovery, the pitch, the close, if you can get to this stage where you've helped someone have a different perspective, if you can help someone have a different belief, if you can help someone get the right info, it means your life's easier. So whether you're here on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, or Instagram, how can you bolt this into your business? How can you get more of this happen in your business? Now, if you don't know how to do this, get in touch with me, because we build all of this out for our clients and then we train them on what to say at each stage. This is why when we now have people like the solar companies that are converting, and it is very high, don't get me wrong, 43 out of 45 SAT appointments. We build all of this out for them based on their business, their team, and their skills. And then imagine for a moment that you do that and you know exactly what to say here to get this happening at the highest possible conversion. And then you know what to say here to get the highest conversions into this stage. And then what to say here to get the highest conversions at this stage. And this means when we get here, we end up making an absolute ton for our clients because they now know the simple but effective paint by numbers process into what they are trying to achieve. So YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you're sat at the moment. And ask yourself a question. What if? What if I'm right? What if your current beliefs, misconceptions, fears, information, and understanding is actually the biggest barrier for you moving forward? Right, go and have a great day today. I'm going out to do some more calls. Have a good day. If you need anything, go to becomeyourpotential.info. Watch the video and see how we can do that for you as well. Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Good to see you. Have a good day.